Hi friends, welcome to this presentation on reading comprehension. First, let me tell you why I'm doing this session. Simple reason, you visited the site gpkafunda.com. It's a site, it's an awesome site. A lot of blogs written which is of benefit to you. It's run by GP or Gautam Puri. I've written a few articles on reading comprehension in that site, like the one that you can see on the screen right now. A lot of students who've asked me a lot of queries on RC. I don't know whether I was able to capture my thoughts on pen. So I thought, let me make a presentation wherein I'll try and capture whatever I wanted to say to you, right? So that's the only reason. Let's get started. So if you look at a reading comprehension passage, you see a passage, you see a question. What you need to understand is that these two are created by two different people. A passage written by someone else, a question created by someone else. So therefore two skills are required. One is you must know how to read, or let me say art of reading, and second is you must know how to solve, or the skill of solving. Let's start with art of reading. When I look at art of reading, experts, not me, experts say there are two levels of reading comprehension skills. One is a literal comprehension skills, and the second is a critical comprehension skills. What does literal comprehension skill mean? It means I've read a passage and I've understood what I've read, which means three things. A, I am able to recognize the main idea, and this is actually very critical. When I read a passage, do I know what the author exactly wanted to tell me? Or which is that one statement, or what I call the thesis statement in the whole passage, which captures the essence of the passage. That's number one. Number two is, are you able to identify the supporting details, those things that are supporting what the author wants to tell? And three, are you able to determine the meaning of the word in the context of the passage? Now there are questions in the reading comprehension which ask you on these three things, but beyond this there is something else that matters. In fact, a lot of other things which comes under the critical comprehension skills, starting with, I'm able to recognize author's purpose. Why did he write the passage? Two, in the style in which he wrote the passage, or identify the author's overall organization of the pattern of the passage. Three, can I distinguish between what's a fact and what's an opinion by the author? I'm able to detect any bias by the author. Is he taking any position? Is that position based on certain bias? Does he have it? Or does she have it? I'm able to recognize the attitude the author has towards the subject that he's writing, which is otherwise called the tone of the passage. Implicit and explicit relationship within sentences, or relationship between sentences. Am I able to recognize which are the valid and invalid arguments? And can I draw logical inferences and conclusions? The first step is a literal comprehension skill. The second is a critical comprehension skills. When you look at a reading comprehension passage that you get in the CAT and other major examinations, you will see that the second part plays a key role. But let me also tell you this, that unless and until you're able to do literal comprehension skills, you cannot do critical comprehension skills. Okay, let me ask you one more question. And this is often the question that most of us have. Is art of reading about skimming? Alright, to answer this question, I have this one sentence. This says, if you've denied that I have yet to see the movie, then I'd be inclined to dismiss any claim that you're reluctant to obfuscate the truth. Now you tell me whether I saw the movie, whether I did not see the movie. You could probably pause the video and try and answer this question. Did skimming help? Let me tell you something. Skimming is a refined art. When I'm saying I'm doing skimming, I'm also saying that I'm aware which area to skim. Okay, that's kind of refined skills. Difficult to develop, but can be developed. But let's go with a simple rule that we'll not skim. We will read the passage completely, however big the passage is. In fact, I'll also tell you in this presentation how to read. Okay, so we'll forget about skimming, because your RCs, in fact CAT and RCs that come in other major examinations, require reading comprehensions or critical reading skills. Let's get to this sentence now and handle this. Okay, let's take the first part. It says, if you denied that I have yet to see the movie. Okay, I have yet to see the movie. That means I have not seen the movie. That is something that you deny. Therefore, what is that you're supporting? You're supporting the opposite, which means you're supporting the fact that I've seen the movie. So that part is telling us that you're saying that I saw the movie. Alright, then what am I doing? Then I'll be inclined to dismiss. I'll dismiss something. What is that I'm dismissing? Any other claim or any claim that you're reluctant to obfuscate the truth. Let's go there. Any claim that you're reluctant to obfuscate the truth. Okay, reluctant, obfuscate. Reluctant mean what? Don't want to. Obfuscate is confuse or hide. So what are you essentially saying? Any claim that don't want to hide the truth. If you don't want to hide the truth, you don't want to hide it, which means you don't want to lie. If you don't want to lie, what is that you want to do? You want to tell the truth. So a claim that says you're telling the truth. Okay, let's put that down. So someone says you're telling the truth. Now what am I doing? I'm going to dismiss that. Okay, great. I'll dismiss, which means that claim made by someone else is not the truth, or it's a lie. So the fact that you're telling the truth is a lie. So you are lying. I saw the movie is a lie. Therefore, I did not see the movie. Tough, yeah? But yes, there are these sentences, especially when it gets to passages on art, literature, passages on philosophy. You'll get these hard sentences, long ones. And one of the skill set is that you just simply can't skim it. Otherwise, you'll miss all the main idea or what the author really wants to tell us. Okay, let's do a few things. First, we'll learn the art of reading and the skill of solving using a few, probably about 5 short passages. We will apply what we learn in, let's say, 2 long passages. Then I'll take 2 very tough reading comprehension passages and tell you how we can apply this knowledge. Alright, let's get started with the first part. Art of reading and skill of solving. Let's take a passage. A short one. You could probably pause the video and mark it. It is important. You must pause the video. You must read the passage. You mark the answer. And then you'll understand why your answer is right or why your answer is wrong. So go ahead and do that. Pause. Okay. Now that you have an answer, I don't know what it is mark. By the way, answer choice is D. Option A is wrong. Option B is wrong. Option C is wrong. Option D is definitely right. Okay, what is important for us to figure out why A, B, C are wrong? Let's try and do that now. First, the art of reading. Before solving the question, okay, read everything, don't skip. Okay, but then, now the two, 3 things happen here. One is, if you're reading something that you enjoy reading, then your brain automatically processes that information, so you're able to comprehend. But when most of the time you're reading things that you never read before, or things that you don't like reading, therefore you have to force your brain to process the information. So what we'll do is we'll not process all the information. We'll process only those information which we think are important. But how do you decide which one is important? We need to understand the main elements. The thesis sentence and also its position. So broadly this looks like a jargon, sounds like a jargon rather, but not difficult. Let's see. Let's look at this sentence or look at the passage. Let's go one sentence at a time and see what information to process or how to process information. First sentence. I have often on occasion to remark the fortitude with which women sustain the most overwhelming reverses of fortune. So what elements do we have? He's talking about women sustaining what? Sustaining reverses of fortune. Okay, great. So let's put that down. I've put that down on the bottom there. Okay, fine. If they're misfortune. And then what we know is women sustains. Awesome. Second sentence. Those disasters which break down the spirit of a man and prostrate him in the dust seem to call forth all the energies of the softer sex and give such interpretive elevation to their character that at times it approaches to sublimity. Okay, any more element? Yeah. Someone is breaking down. Man breaks down. Okay, let's put that down. Anything else? Prostrate in the dust is actually man breaking down, so nothing more. Seems to call for all the energy of softer sex and gives an interpretive elevation to their character that at times approach sublimity. Is talking about women sustaining. Okay, so no more information to be processed. Sentence is done. Third sentence. Nothing can be more touching than to behold a soft tender female who had been all weakness and dependence and alive to every trivial roughness while treading the prosperous paths of life, suddenly rising in mental force to be the comfort and support of her husband under misfortune and abiding with unshrinking firmness the bitterest blast of adversity. Any more information? I can find one. That's kind of, I think, the thesis. She comforts and supports her husband. Okay, let's put that down there. She comforts and supports her husband. Okay, so when that passage is giving me this information, that when misfortune happens, women sustain, men break down, and women supports, comforts men. In fact, husband. Okay, once we've done that, that's kind of out of how big the passage is. What we essentially need to do is understand which are the main elements and use that to understand the main idea of the passage. Okay, let's get to the question. Which of the following represent the main idea of the passage? Okay, skill of solving. Now, let's go back one step back and look at how does a question setter work. What does a question setter do? He creates a question. Awesome. Actually, not really relevant to the skill of solving. Irrespective of whatever is the question that he creates, not important. The skill of solving has to do with something else. I'll explain this further. Actually, what I'm saying, it doesn't matter what question. Inference-based question, main idea question, tone-based question, irrelevant. What is more relevant is something else. Works the correct answer. Okay, how does he work the correct answer? Something that is 100% true based on the passage. This is something that you must understand. Whatever is answer, or whatever her answer, must be something that is 100% true based on the passage. And you can get to that answer by the art of reading. However, a lot of times you won't be able to find the right answer. You'll have to do something else. That is why the third thing happens. He creates or she creates incorrect answer choices. The real skill of solving is knowing the incorrect ones, irrespective of what the question is or the question stem is. If we know how incorrect options are created, I can use that to attack the passage. Let's understand this from the context of this particular passage. Remember, in this passage what we understood was when misfortune happens, women sustain, their husband break down, and women support their husband. Okay, three things. True, false, uncertain. Okay. True is something that is 100% true based on the passage. False is something that contradicts the passage. Uncertain is something for which we don't have information or we have limited information. Let's look at an example. For example, if I say that I'm a man, you would say yes, 100% is true. I'm a woman, you would say that I'm 100% is that's false. If I say I have 3 kids, uncertain. You probably need to know additional information. Kind of this. Your answer is something that is 100% is true based on the passage. True answer choice. False answer choice are easy to identify. The difficult one is to identify the uncertain one. Let's start. Let me ask you this question based on this passage. If I make a statement that women supports a husband, would it be true? Would it be false? Would it be uncertain? Let me repeat. Based on this passage, if I say women supports a husband, would it be true? Would it be false? Would it be uncertain? If you say true, that'll be wrong because it is uncertain. If I say women supports a husband, that is too broad, right? Women supports a husband under the condition of misfortune. Husband cheats. We don't know what is going to happen. So one way of creating a wrong answer choice is to create something that is broad or more general than what is mentioned in the passage. Whatever your answer choice must be specific based on the passage. That's number one. Number two, if I say women supports a family, is family mentioned? Husband, yeah, but family also has other members, right? That is not mentioned. What is also makes a certain answer choice uncertain is if an alien concept of things that are out of scope, not discussed in the passage is mentioned. That's number two. Number three, if I say today's women supports her husband under misfortune, that will also be incorrect because that is narrower than what is being discussed in the passage. And last but not the least is you cannot have anything that is extreme. For women always supports her husband, men always break down. The words impossible, never, only, all these best, most, unless of course it is mentioned in the passage specifically, most of the time you'll find that extreme choices are uncertain ones. So you can think of that as BANE or BANE. This is something that I've mentioned in that blog. I hope now we can make sense of what I was trying to say at that point in time. Okay. Let's look at each option. Women are courageous in times of misfortune and weak in times of fortune. If you remember, such a comparison often never made. And in fact, that is even not the main idea of the passage. That's a concept which is alien. Option A, incorrect. Option A, incorrect. Let's go to B. The author believes the weakest of the female can be source of strength when the occasion calls for it. 3 problems. Problem number 1, weakest. That's extreme. Source of strength. Source of strength to whom? The passage was very specific to source of strength to their husband. So that is a broad statement, right? When the occasion calls for it. What occasion? That's broad. So therefore, option B is incorrect. Option C. The author is amazed that the character of a woman can be altered by her circumstances. By her circumstances. What circumstances? Broad. Therefore, we are left with D, and D would be the right answer choice. Okay. So if you actually read D, women often provide support and strength to their menfolk in times of misfortune. Women providing support and strength menfolk in times of misfortune is 100% true. Okay. That's an art. Let's see you applying this to the next question. So pause the video, try it, mark the answer. Okay. If you marked option C, you'll be correct. If you mark option B, that'll be a crime. If you mark option D, that'll also be a crime. Okay. Option A, yeah, you fell for a trap. I'll tell you what trap you fell for. Let's actually read. It says, back in St. Petersburg in 1892, it never looked destined to become the world's most popular ballet. Critics grumbled that the storyline, distilled from the E.T.A. Hoffman story, was inconsistent and dull. The Chavazi score was disproportionately sumptuous, even that too much money had been spent on staging. By 1927, Nutcracker had slipped so far from official favor that the radical choreographer Fedor Lubkov felt free to reinvent it in the style of satirical review. Then it was discovered by the West, and companies discovered that they had a family-friendly, festive ballet that could be turned into box office gold every year at Christmas. Okay, let's look at the passage and do a little bit of art of reading. I think these are the key parts. So one was, it said back in 1892, it was inconsistent and dull, and 1920 said Nutcracker. So we know it's talking about Nutcracker slipped so far, so it was really bad. Then it says this gentleman called Fedor reinvented it, and then it was discovered by the West and became a success every year at Christmas. Let's have pause for a moment and think of the piece of information that we have. Nutcracker was bad, in the sense bad in quotes, okay. Fedor changes to satire, that's in after 1927. Fedor roles in Nutcracker's later success is not clear. Whether it is because of that change it became successful is something that is not mentioned in the passage. Therefore, we cannot be sure of that. And for what we know is it became successful in the West, but rest of the world, not clear. Okay, let's get to each of the answer choice. Fedor Lubkov converted Nutcracker from a flop show to a box office success story. The reason why it is false, because that part we are not sure. Whether Fedor Lubkov choreography converted Nutcracker from a flop show to a box, we don't know. And second of all, we only know that from the passage it was successful in the West. So option A is uncertain, right? Option B, piece of art that are rejected by critics often find places among success stories at box office will be too broad. We're talking about Nutcracker, we cannot take it bigger than that, right? So B is wrong. C, Nutcracker received heavy criticism in early years but went on to become a very popular ballet in the West. 2 parts. The fact that it received heavy criticism in early years was true. It went on to become a very popular ballet in the West was also true. So yeah, so C is true. D, Nutcracker, after being choreographed by Fedor Lubkov, became the most popular ballet to be played at Christmas. Most extreme. Ladies and gentlemen, be wrong. So answer choice is C. Let's see, one more. Pause, solve, and let's see whether you got it right. Okay, so if you marked D, be someone who's fascinated by Japan, would be right. For those of you mark either A or B, you fell for a trap. That trap is, it doesn't, let me tell you this, most of the time this happens, and this is true. Which is, if there is an option which sounds more intelligent than another option which doesn't sound intelligent, we have this tendency to mark the intelligent one because there's an assumption that answer choice must be intelligent sounding ones. For example, if you look at between B and D, B says be a citizen of a country which until now did not have cordial relationship with Japan, slightly more intelligent statement. And D says be someone who is fascinated by Japan, less intelligent statement. So we have this tendency to mark B. Don't fall for all of this. I'll tell you why A and B is wrong. I think A and B talks about country which has a cordial relation or a citizen of a country which did not have a cordial relation. I think that came from the last sentence. But look at the last sentence. We think you that ours is the first stage in history to bring about friendly understanding intercourse between people of different countries. Now ask this question yourself. If people of different countries have a certain or good relation, does that necessitate country having good relations? These are two different things, mind you. Yes, you got it right. So therefore A and B is incorrect. It talks about people having relationship. That's what the passage is saying. But country therefore having relationship, it's clearly uncertain. So A and B is wrong. Let's go to C. Be a regular visitor of Japan. For someone to be a regular visitor of Japan, you should visit at least twice. What we know is from the passage, they visited your beautiful country. That's all we know. He has visited at least once. We can't say it is a regular visitor. So it's C. Someone who is fascinated by Japan. I'm sure that you can get the clues there. Beautiful country, scenic cities, houses with mountains and woods, full of colored drawings by Japanese children, lies always on my table. So yeah, so D is the right answer choice. Yeah. Let's look at one more, the last one. That's on science. The tricky one. Go ahead, pause the video and see if you've got the answer right or wrong. By the way, option A is saying only 1 and 2, option B is saying only 2 and 3, option C is saying only 3, option D is saying none of 1, 2 and 3. Okay, got it. Let's see. I'm not going to read it. Okay, so I'm telling you, pause the video, read it, because I'm not going to read the passage. Okay. Alright, which among the following is true based on the information given in the passage? A. Dinosaurs did not appear on Earth during the Paleozoic era. Okay, that's statement number 1. So look at, this is the part from the passage. All three were formed many hundreds of millions of years ago, before the time of the dinosaurs, hence the name fossil fuels. The age they were formed is called the Carboniferous period. It was a part of the Paleozoic era. So what we know is, during the Carboniferous period, there was no dinosaurs. But Carboniferous period is a part of a Paleozoic period. Can I say dinosaur did not appear in Paleozoic period? Not really, because the Paleozoic era can be this huge. Carboniferous period is a part of it. The dinosaurs can still appear in some other period during that whole era. So yeah, it can appear anywhere. So A is wrong. The first one is wrong. Terrestrial animal life was not established by Carboniferous period. What is given is all three were formed hundreds of millions of years ago, before the time of dinosaurs. So dinosaurs was not the Carboniferous period. But terrestrial animal life could even be cockroach, right? So no information. So second one is wrong. The large coal deposits of Carboniferous period were primarily due to algae. Primarily. So that's a key word. Let's see anything from the passage. It says, at the time, the land was covered with swamps filled with huge trees, ferns, and other large leafy plants. The water and seas were filled with algae. The green stuff that forms a significant pool of water. Algae is actually millions of very small plants. And as the trees and plants died, they sank to the bottom of the swamps and oceans, so on and so forth. So is there information that says primarily it was due to algae? No, algae was a part, but was the primary reason? No, not mentioned. So answer or choice would be D. None of 1, 2 and 3. Okay. Now, I hope you've got a sense of how to handle a reading comprehension passage. Okay. Let's apply that on a slightly bigger ones. The kind that you get in the CAT. Okay, let's probably look at two passages now. Now I'll read the passage. Okay, let's do this together in fact. So it's got about 4 paragraph. Sorry, 6 paragraph. Slightly longer ones. Paragraph number 1. Some of the various arguments for atheism claim that the concept of God is incoherent, that there are logical problems with the existence of such a being. Look at the sentence. Yeah. Some of the various arguments for atheism claim that. So he start by saying there are various arguments for atheism, and they say that existence of God is illogical. Okay. Perhaps the best known of these is the paradox of stone. Can God create a stone so heavy that he cannot lift it? Paragraph 2. Either God cannot create such a stone or he can't. If he can't, then there is something that he cannot do, namely create the stone, and therefore he is not omnipotent. If he can, then there is also something that he cannot do, namely lift the stone, and therefore he is not omnipotent. Either way, God is not omnipotent. A being that is not omnipotent, though, is not God. God therefore does not exist. Okay, so paragraph number 1, let's process the information slowly. Paragraph number 1, the author talks about the fact that a lot of arguments against theism or for atheism that God does not exist. One such argument is a paradox of stone, and he explained paradox of stone. What does paradox of stone mean? That can God create a stone that he cannot lift? He is omnipotent, all powerful. So if he cannot create such a stone, then he is not omnipotent. If he creates a stone, then that stone is something that he cannot lift. There is something that he cannot do. Therefore, he is not omnipotent. A being that is not omnipotent is not God. Therefore, God does not exist. That's an argument. Okay. Paragraph 3. Although this simple argument may appear compelling at first glance, there are some fundamental problems with it. Before identifying these problems, however, it is necessary to make clear what is meant by omnipotence. Alright, now we know very clearly where the author stands. Author is going to attack this omnipotence paradox or the paradox of stone. Great. So, 4. Christian philosophers have understood omnipotence in different ways. René Descartes thought of omnipotence as the ability to do absolutely anything. According to Descartes, God can do the logically impossible. He can make square circles. He can make 2 plus 2 equal to 5. If Descartes' conception of omnipotence is correct, then any attempt to disprove God's existence using logic is hopeless. If God can do the logically impossible, then he can both create a stone so heavy that he cannot lift it, and lift it and so can do all things. Yes, there is a contradiction in this. But so what? God can, on this understanding of omnipotence, make contradictions true. Descartes' understanding omnipotence, therefore, doesn't seem to be vulnerable to the paradox of the stone. Descartes can answer the question yes without compromising divine omnipotence. Alright, so let's process the basic information. What has the author done? Author said he's going to attack the omnipotence. So paradox. He's going to use that by understanding the meaning of the word of the word omnipotence. He first used René Descartes, who says that God is able to do anything. So he can't do anything, even the paradoxical things. Okay, great. Para 5. According to Aquinas, God is able to do anything possible. He can part the Red Sea and he can restore the dead to life, but he cannot violate the laws of logic and mathematics in a way that Descartes thought that he could. Okay, Aquinas' understanding omnipotence, which is more popular than that of Descartes, also survives the paradox of stone. For if God exists, then he is a being that can lift all stones. A stone that is so heavy that God cannot lift, it is therefore an impossible object. According to Aquinas' understanding omnipotence, remember, God is able to do anything possible. But not anything impossible. And creating a stone that God cannot lift is something impossible. Aquinas can therefore answer the question no without compromising divine omnipotence. Okay, so simple. So he used Descartes, then he used Aquinas' understanding of omnipotence to attack the argument. Paragraph 6. The paradox of stone then can be resolved. It fails to show that there is incoherence in the theistic conception of God, and so fails to demonstrate that God does not exist. Which, according to, is a thesis statement, and this is important to understand. What is really the author wants to tell you? The thesis statement is paragraph 6. That's what he wanted to do. How he did it, it explained in the previous paragraph. But what he really wanted to communicate to us is written in paragraph number 6. That is, the paradox of stone can be resolved. It fails to show that there is incoherence in the theistic conception of God. Okay. If you want to put a map of how the author went about doing it was author explained what is paradox of stone, explains how he will resolve the paradox. He also uses the meaning of the word omnipotence as understood by Christian philosophers, counters the paradox of stone, and finally claims that the paradox of stone can easily be resolved. This sort of a mental understanding, and also author's position. Author is very clearly against the argument presented by paradox of stone. He's attacking it, right? And this understanding is what you need to have when you go to the question. Actually, doing about this, it will take about what? About 5 minutes, 6 minutes, maybe even 7 minutes for some of you. But that's okay. If you don't completely understand the passage, and then you go back to the question, you keep on going back and reading the passage again and again and again, and that's where the real time wasting happens. So therefore, what is important is, don't do any skimming. Okay, read the passage, process the information that you think are relevant, leave the rest in the passage. Okay, understand the broad map of the passage, understand what the thesis statement of the passage is, and then go look at the question. If you can answer the question without coming back to the passage, great. Which is actually difficult most of the time. But if there is any specific question being asked, we'll go back, hunt that information in the passage, and understand it again. Let's start with, there are about 5 questions. Let's start with 1. Which of the following best describes the main end of the passage? Pause the video and answer the question and see whether you and me got it right or wrong. Answer with the basic understanding. This was a thesis statement, right? Paragraph 6. The paradox of stone then can be resolved. It fails to show that incoherence in the theistic conception of God, and so fails to demonstrate that God does not exist. That is in C. The paradox of stone does not succeed in the atheistic argument, as it fails to demonstrate any inconsistencies in the theistic notion of God. Exactly same sentence, right? Written slightly differently. Let's look at the problem with each of this. Number 1. The paradox of stone is compelling, but it can be resolved by understanding the meaning of omnipotence. Remember what he said. Okay, now the second part is fine, which is, but it can be resolved by understanding the meaning of omnipotence as understood by Christian philosophers. The second part of option A is good. The problem is with the first part. The paradox of stone is compelling. Let me go back there. Focus on paragraph number 3. Okay, although this simple argument may appear compelling at first glance. So he is not saying it is compelling, he is actually saying it is not compelling. It may appear compelling, which is why that answer is wrong. Which is why the first one is wrong. Look at B. Various arguments of atheism. No, the whole passage was focused on one argument of atheism, which is the paradox of stone. D. Studying the works of Descartes and Aquinas brings into focus a difference on how Christian philosopher understood omnipotence. The passage does mention omnipotence, but the purpose of the passage is not to tell you what omnipotence is more to do with attacking the argument paradox of stone. Therefore, D is incorrect. Answer choice is C. Second question. The author most likely mentions 2 plus 2 equals to 5, 2. So what you will actually do is go back to the passage, and that's where it is. Okay, Christian philosopher may have understood omnipotence in different ways. René Descartes thought of omnipotence as the ability to do absolutely anything. According to Descartes, God can do the logically impossible. He can make square circles. He can make 2 plus 2 equal to 5. If Descartes' conception of omnipotence is correct, then any attempt to disprove God's existence using logic is hopeless. Whenever you answer these questions, I think that if you let's quickly look at the options. Illustrate that God is capable of doing anything possible, which is in fact correct. In fact incorrect, because that is something that other guy said, Aquinas. Descartes is saying God, Descartes, look at the second sentence in the thing in black. René Descartes thought of omnipotence as the ability to do absolutely anything. Descartes is saying God is possible of doing anything, even the impossible thing. Option A is anyway wrong. Option B, argue that belief in omnipotent God is necessary. C, demonstrate the futility of the atheist argument. D, educate the reader that God is a being that is capable of accomplishing even the impossible. Alright. Now, some of you may have marked option D. But option D is wrong. I'll tell you why. The purpose must be the role in the context of the entire passage. Now let's do a different journey. If option D was correct, that its whole purpose educating the reader that God is a being that is capable of accomplishing even the impossible, then how will the passage look like? If the purpose of actually putting 2 plus 2 equal to 5 in the context of the entire passage is to tell you how great God is, the whole passage will sound like a sermon, right? So what is the real purpose? It is there in that whole passage. Go back and look down in the thing that I've mentioned in yellow. So it's according to Descartes. So one sentence before that, according to Descartes, God can do the logically impossible. He can make square circles. He can make 2 plus 2 equal to 5. If Descartes' conception of omnipotence is correct, then any attempt to disprove God's existence using logic is hopeless. So why did he bring it? He brought it to demonstrate the futility of the atheistic argument. So, purpose question, please understand, it must be in the context of the whole passage. According to the passage, which which statement best describes how Aquinas understood omnipotence? Okay. This is what Aquinas said. According to Aquinas, God is able to do anything possible. He can part the Red Sea. He can restore the dead to life. But he cannot violate the laws of logic and mathematics. There is something that he cannot do. So therefore, option C. God created a world in which his own abilities are limited. Okay. There is something that he cannot do. He cannot violate logic and mathematics. Therefore, that is correct. Other options, we can quickly look at them. A says nothing greater than God can be conceived. Too far-fetched. Okay. B, with God all things are possible. Well, that is the other guy's, Mr. Descartes' position. D says God can do the logically impossible. He just chooses not to be restricting himself. Vague statement. So C is perfect. Let's look at 4. Based on the passage, Descartes is most likely to agree to which of the following statements? Let's look at what Descartes has said. René Descartes thought of omnipotence as the ability to do absolutely anything. According to Descartes, God can do the logically impossible. That's all we know. All that the passage tells us that Descartes says God can do the logically impossible. Okay. If Descartes' conception of omnipotence is correct, then any attempt to disprove God's existence using logic is hopeless. There is no point in trying to prove the argument about omnipotence or not. So which one? Okay, let's look at each options. Answer choice A is the right answer choice. Let's see why B, C, D are wrong. God cannot sin because then he would not be perfect. In fact, God can do anything, right? So how can I say God cannot sin? By that logic, in fact. God is ubiquitous. God ubiquitous is present everywhere, not mentioned. The D, there are those things that are logically impossible for a non-omnipotent being. Now this is something that some of you will eventually mark, but there is a small rule. When you are talking about a particular set, what happens outside that set is irrelevant. Okay. So if we are talking about a set of people, which is only God, which is omnipotent being. A non-omnipotent being is outside that particular set, which is irrelevant actually. It's like saying me and my wife has a great life. That does not mean my neighbor doesn't have, right? So D is incorrect. Look at A. There is no point using the phrase omnipotent as the logical impossibility doesn't apply to God. Look at that statement. That is exactly what is mentioned in the passage, right? So A is perfect. Fifth one. What best describes the tone of the passage? The attitude. Analogical, argumentative, derisive, analytical. Analogical reasoning essentially means a type of thinking that relies upon analogy. Analogy is kind of saying X is similar to Y, X has property P, therefore Y has property P. This is not analogical. Okay, he has not used an analogy in this whole passage. Argumentative is an evidentiary position. Argumentative is an evidentiary objection raised and argued using logical argumentation. True, actually, in this passage. Derisive is like expressing contempt and ridicule. That is not what the author is doing. He is not negative, though he is critical. he's not negative. He has not given any, if I can use the word gali. Gali, I said, gali. Swear words. He's been very polite, humble, but used logical argumentation to attack. Analytical is kind of using analysis and logical reasoning. Now this has to be argumentative. The reason why it is not analytical is because of this. That in analytical passage, you don't necessarily take a position. It's kind of saying you decide. I've given my my viewpoint, kind of saying you think what's right or wrong. But argumentativeness is a passage where you're saying you are right and something else is wrong, and you're doing that using a logical argumentation. This is clearly an argumentative passage. By the way, most of the passage in philosophy argumentative. Last question. Each of the following, if true, underpins the author's argument using Aquinas' insight of omnipotence, except. Okay, this is, you have to be careful with these kind of questions. Except, which essentially means three of them uses Aquinas' understanding of omnipotence. One does not. Which one does not? Let's look at Aquinas. According to Aquinas, God is able to do anything possible. He can part the Red Sea and he can restore the dead to life, but he cannot violate the logic. Laws of logic and mathematics. So one that directly contradicts is clearly there, option D. If God created logic, it follows that he can violate logic. That's against the position of Aquinas, so that's the right answer choice. Tough one, yeah. This passage is, but not bad, right? So it requires look at the amount of critical reading that one needs to do to be able to do when reading comprehension. But the crux of the story is understanding the main idea of the passage, reading the passage completely, process the information that is relevant, and then attack the question. And whenever you want to mark an answer, you must look for things that are 100% true based on the passage. Let's look at the second passage. This has got about 5 paragraphs. Okay, let's start. Lucian Freud has some intriguing opinions about other artists. He has no time for Leonardo da Vinci. He wonders if Raphael's Madonna of the Pink, brought by the National Gallery after a popular campaign, is really by Raphael at all, because normally I can't bear Raphael, but I like that one a little bit. His own hero is Titan, whose paintings mean infinitely more to him than the works of Poussin, let alone Vermeer, whose people he thinks bizarrely absent. Yeah, once you get into these passages in art and literature, you have all these words difficult to pronounce. Okay, but let's do some processing. Paragraph number 1 introduced Lucian Freud. And the fact that the author, the first sentence, Lucian Freud has some intriguing opinions about other artists. Okay, that's all we'll take away from paragraph number 1. The first sentence. Paragraph 2. How do we know all this? No, Freud hasn't started his own blog. Instead, the famously reticent painter imparted these views to a friend, the critic Martin Gayford, who does blog over at Bloomberg. His new book, Man with a Blue Scarf, Gayford tells how, having known Freud for years, he finally popped the question, would the greatest living painter of portraits paint his portrait? He was surprised when the answer was yes, and that Freud had wanted to get cracking right away. Okay, paragraph 2. The author says, how do I know this? Freud didn't tell me, someone else did, and that guy's name is Martin Gayford, and he has written a book, which is Man with a Blue Scarf. Paragraph 3. When he paints, Freud talks, and he likes to go to a restaurant with a sitter after each session to carry on talking. So finally, after all these years and his subject's cooperation, Martin Gayford is able to give readers the eloquent and pugnacious voice of Lucian Freud on art, artists, and life. In reviews of the book, which are very positive, it is quotes from Freud that tends to seal the show. But this book is not just for Freud fans, for ensemble intellect documents for art students. Okay, let's move on to paragraph 4. The fascination of Freud's persona and ideas comes across so well because of the artist or because of the writer's skill. Freud's style is unmistakable. Gayford downplays his own, but actually it is his craft as a storyteller that turns but were actually a fractured series of encounters. In the sense, all life is a series of fractured encounters into a gripping, dramatic read. Basically, what he's saying is that book is good. Mr. Gayford had done a fantastic job, written really well, brought Mr. Freud really well, brought out his characters and whatever really well. Okay, let's carry on. It is, I think, a new style of art writing in which the critic does not assume the lofty position of a pontiff or professor between artist and public. He is unpretentious and natural, and above all wants to capture Freud as a person, not just as a painter. Or maybe since the book is very directly about the making of the work of art as a person painting. Paragraph 5. It is Freud who dominates the book. It is Gayford's achievement to bring him out and to do with so wit and humor as well as acute intelligence. Man with the blue scarf is literally inimitable. No one else is going to get this opportunity, but it contains a lot that critics and even novelists can learn from. It is a real deal. Okay, so when we leave the passage, we can carry this forward. Man with the Blue Scarf, written by Gayford, is a book about Lucian Freud. His heart captures a lot of things. Basically, author says the book is awesome. Let's see. Now this says, which of the following cannot be inferred about Lucian Freud? Which means 3 can be inferred, 1 cannot be. Let's find out which one. He is usually a reticent person. It was written in the passage. Instead, the famous reticent painter, okay, written. He was enthusiastic about painting Gayford's portrait. Would the greatest living painter of the portrait paint his portrait? He was surprised when the answer was yes, and that Freud wanted to get cracking right away. Yes. Freud is a gifted to a storyteller? No, not mentioned at all, right? D is mentioned. He likes to interact with his subjects even after the process of painting. So when he paints, Freud talks and likes to go to the restaurant with a sitter and so on and so forth. Very true. What is definitely the answer is C. Easy picking. Alright. 8th one. According to author, which of the following is true about Gayford's book on Lucian Freud? A. Freud comes across as unpretentious and natural in this book. Quotes from Freud steal the show away from Gayford's writing. The book is primarily for Freud's fans and supporters. Although Freud dominates his book, it works because of Gayford's writing. So these are the kind of questions that you might get confused. You really have to go back to the passage and hunt for the right piece of information. Let's look at A. Freud comes across as unpretentious and natural in these books. He is unpretentious and natural. Who is this he? The he is, look at this, Gayford downplays his own, I think, okay, it's Gayford who is unpretentious and natural. And above all, wants to capture Freud as a person. Now look at this option. Freud comes across unpretentious and natural, which is why A is incorrect. Quotes of Freud steal the show away from Gayford's writing. Look at the trap. Okay, it's here. Quotes from Freud that tend to steal the show, but this book is not just about Freud fans. Okay, tends to steal the show. The word is tend to steal the show. Quote from Freud, steal the show away from, that is too strong a statement, which is not really mentioned in the passage. So we'll keep this aside. The book is primarily, again the word primarily, for, that's a key word, primarily for Freud's fans and supporters. Let's look at that. The book is not just for Freud's fans or supporters. This is definitely false. So we'll have to look at the D. Although the Freud dominates this book, it works because of Gayford's writing. This is mentioned. If it is Freud who dominates the book, it is Gayford's achievement to bring him about and to do so with wits and humor, acute intelligence. So D is perfect. Where could the passage have been taken from? Here we have And where is the passage taken from? Okay, an article on Lucian Freud, a review of Man with the Blue Scarf, an article on Freud and Gayford, an article on Man with the Blue Scarf. So very clearly, it should be one of these. It is either B or it is D. Now we are confused because of the word. It is taken from something on Man with the Blue Scarf because the whole passage was specific about that particular book written by Gayford. Now this is tricky question. Something you should avoid or could avoid, but we need to understand whether review or an article. A review is a critical article or report, as in periodical on a book, play, recital, or the like. Critique, evaluation. Article is well written, composed in the prose. But here is why we'll have to go with option D, because in the passage it is given in reviews of the book, which are very positives, something is written. So if in the passage he is mentioning or quoting reviews of the books, then this cannot be a review of the book, no? Right, so option D would be the right answer choice. Let's look at some really tough RC passage now. Let's do two more, okay? Tough ones, starting with one on philosophy, really tough. Try and read this passage. Take about 5 minutes and read it. Pause the video and read. Really tough, yeah. I don't know how much of the information you captured. I have a few questions. Did you identify the most critical sentence? Can you make sense of what the passage is? It's very tough and very difficult to comprehend. Even the first paragraph, look at this. A first evident logical weakness of the semantic interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine is that concepts such as conventionality or conceptual being are inconceivable without admitting some idea of reality or independent being. Therefore, the phrase ultimate reality does not exist and everything is only conceptual reality is inconsistent from a logical point of view. Indeed, if we exclude that real might exist beyond the conceptual, we are not eliminating reality, but are rather saying the conceptual is only real. Now, idealism, apart from the question of whether it may truly be considered an interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine as recently defended by Schulman, is one of the metaphysical realist position from its semantic interpretation, or at least it is writing, claims to take a distance. Semantic interpreters, in objection to this logical proof, state that it is possible to demonstrate the existence of something that is only conventional without being real and without deriving the existence from an admitted reality of the pure type. Whew. Didn't make sense, but we still have to solve the question. So the question is, which is the key sentence? I think, read this. We want key sentence. What does the author, let's look at what the author wants to tell us. What does he want to tell us? What does it really want to tell us? It says, a first evident logical weakness of the semantic interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine. That's what he wants to tell us. There is some logical weakness in the semantic interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine. So let's process that information. The first evident logical weakness of the semantic interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine. Which means what? There is a Nagarjuna's doctrine, and there was a semantic interpretation, some kind of interpretation. We don't know who interpreted, someone did. And author says that interpretation is wrong. That's what. So if you want to capture the complete thing about the passage, we need to find out who someone was who interpreted and why that interpretation was wrong. So then we can capture the whole thing. So let's put this framework now and keep filling in data to this framework till the end. Okay. Second, that sentence goes that concepts such as conventionality or conceptual being are inconceivable without admitting some idea of reality or independent being. Does that make sense? A tough one. Let's read one more sentence, or let's ignore this for the time being. Let's read one more sentence. If it doesn't make sense, we'll have to come back and understand this. Therefore, the phrase ultimate reality, PO, does not exist, and everything is only conceptual reality, SO, is inconsistent from a logical point of view. So this is easy to process. Let's process this one. Inconsistent means wrong. What is wrong? The ultimate reality does not exist, and everything only conceptual reality is wrong. So what is interpretation therefore being made? That PO does not exist, SO exists. Therefore, what is the author saying? PO exists. Okay. So once we understood that, we got some idea what the passage is about. Let's continue. This is nothing more than idealistic position for which Ally Hegel, the only real is rational conceptual. Oh, no. Let's ignore. Now, idealism, apart from the question of whether it may be truly considered an interpretation of Nagarjuna's doctrine, as recently defended by Schulman, is one of the metaphysical realist positions from a semantic interpretation, claims to take a distance. We can see about Sidris. Okay, let's ignore. Now, idealism, apart from the, let's ignore this one. Let's go to the next one. Semantic interpreters, in opposition to this logical proof, state that it is possible to demonstrate existence of something that is only conventional without it being real and without it deriving existence from an ultimate reality pure type. The second part actually state that it is possible to demonstrate semantic interpreters state that it is possible to demonstrate the existence of something that is only conventional, which is only SO, without it being real, without PO, without it deriving is existence ultimate reality pure. Basically, it's a restatement of that interpretation, so it's okay. As an example of this possibility, both Sidris and Garfield have those are our interpreters. Okay, so mostly we got everything, that at least everything in the sense to capture what the author wants to tell us. Anyway, let's read. As an example of this possibility, both Sidris and Garfield have recourse to the institution of money. Sidris state that since the end of gold standard, the value of some example is given. Okay, we'll break our head later. Last paragraph. This, in my opinion, is extremely weak example. So some example is given, he's saying, and that is weak. Not only does it apparently fail to confirm Sidris and Garfield's position that it is possible to conceive of anything that is purely conventional without a need for anything real on a asset basis, but in addition, it would seem to confirm quite the opposite. The conventionality of a banknote indeed is based on reality of the value it represents. If real goods did not exist, it would not be possible, nor would it make any sense to create any monetary system. Similarly, uncontestable that Nagarjuna, some sentence that we can't even read. Okay, but last part. It's such conventionality and such projection must necessarily occur upon a foundation. So again, there must be a foundation which is PO. So all we gather is there is a Nagarjuna's doctrine. Sidris and Garfield made an interpretation which is PO does not exist, SO exists. PO is ultimate reality, SO is conceptual reality. Author is saying that's a wrong interpretation. He says PO exists. Now let me ask you this question. The quantity of information that I process is about 5%. The quantity of information that I processed would be similar probably to the quantity of information that some of you process. The difference only in the quality. Okay, that's the key. So in fact, this happens in almost all the philosophy passage. Every philosophy passage, finally you can find this thesis statement somewhere in the passage, mostly in the first sentence itself, or after the word however. So, and then that's kind of a claim that the author is making, and then he goes on to explain why whatever claim that he's making is correct by giving a lot of evidences and supporting statements to that end. So in any philosophy passage, the key is not to get afraid with all the things that is mentioned in the passage. The key is go and identify what does the author really want to tell us. You can easily handle some of the questions simply because of this, simply based on this. Let's look at the first question. Which of the following are the objections raised by the author with regard to semantic interpretation? What is the objection raised by the author? PO does not exist, SO exists. But let's look at option A and option C. Let me ask you the question. Does the author has a problem with Nagarjuna's doctrine or the interpretation of the doctrine? Clearly, author has a problem with interpretation of the theory and not the theory itself. So therefore, that's not his objection, not with Nagarjuna's theory, but with the interpretation of the theory. So therefore, all of them also goes option B. And if you read option B, the existence of conventional would appear definitely inconceivable without the presupposition of something real, or the existence of SO is not possible without PO. That's what B says, in fact. If you have to do critical reading to get to that. Yeah. Primary purpose. What is the purpose? To do this, to what is mentioned below, which is to attack the argument. So which is to actually attack the interpretation given by Sidris and Garfield, saying that it is wrong. A says present the main incongruities of Nagarjuna's theory. Does he have a problem with Nagarjuna's doctrine or Nagarjuna's theory? No. He has a problem with interpretation. A is wrong. B. undertake to reconstruct. Reconstruct is to build the main features. He wants to attack, so B is wrong. Okay. C. Present the weakness of interpretation of Sid, Race and Garfield. Present the weakness of interpretation of Sid, Race and Garfield of Nagarjuna's theory. Looks perfect. D. Present the critical analysis of interpretation Nagarjuna's doctrine of the truths as summarized by the philosopher. Vague. First of all, it is not a critical analysis. He is trying to attack and not trying to analyze. So C is the right answer choice. 3. Which of the following accurately describe the style of the passage? Very, 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 very clearly argumentative. Okay, so there you go. So tough passage, one sentence. All you have to get to answer the 3 questions. Not bad, yeah. Let's look at the other extreme. Now this is actually a cat passage. It says every civilized society lives and thrives on a silent but profound agreement as to what is to be accepted as a valid mold of experience. Civilization is a complex system of damn. If we keep on reading this, okay, what I'll do is I'm not going to read this passage. I'm going to go slide by slide. You pause the video and then read the passage and then go to the next slide. Okay, so here it starts. Pause now. Okay, you've read it. Now let's go to the second paragraph. Pause. Alright, you've read it. Okay, let's go to the third paragraph. Pause. I hope you've read this one. Right now I'm sure that you've given up. Okay, you just want to continue with the video. I'm sure that is what going through your head. Pause. Read it. Okay. Pause. Read it. Alright, that's it. Really tough, yeah. Really tough. But it always helps to go give one read. Always give a read. Don't first. Just give a random read and try and gather as much as possible. Difficult. Okay. I think it talks about some vigorous creative passion in art during Renaissance period. Something like that is talking about. But then there is no question which asks the main idea. Everything was detail based. In the passage, the expression like a Madonna, from a Madonna alludes to. It was in first paragraph. Let me push it down here. Now can you read this and try and by some hook or crook answer this question. Pause, read, answer the question, and I'll tell you whether you got it right or wrong. Okay. If you answered option B, it'll be correct. Let's read this. Every civilized society lives and thrives on a silent but profound agreement as to what is to be accepted as a valid mold of experience. Okay. Sentence 1. Every civilized society has some agreement. Okay, let's leave it at that. 2. Civilization is a complex system of dams, dikes and canals boarding off, directing and articulating the influx of the surrounding fluid elements. A fertile fenland, rehabilitated drain and protected from the high tides of chaotic, unexercised and inarticulate expression. Okay. Statement 2. Civilization is complex. That we'll take. In such a culture, what kind of a culture? A complex culture where there is a silent agreement. Okay. Have you lost me? Okay, let me just push my pen so that you know where I am now. Okay, you have read till here. Okay, here we're going to start from here. In such a culture, stable and sure of itself, with this frontier of natural experience, the art wields the creative power, not so much width as it's in depth. Okay, that's the key thing. Okay, but difficult. They do not create new experience, but deepen and purify the old. Their works do not differ from one another, like a new horizon from a new horizon, but like a Madonna from a Madonna. Okay, let's look at this and focus on this part. The art wield the creative power, not so much width as in depth, do not create new experience, but deepen and purify the old. They are deepening and purifying the old, deepening and they're taking the old things and making it again. Roughly, can I say it is this a key sentence? Do not create new experience, deepen and purify the old. We can think of this some kind of remakes, Agnipath 1 to Agnipath 2 types. Okay, now use that and let's look at this. The difference arising as a consequence of artistic license. can't gather the difference between two artistic interpretation possible. The one that is interpreted by the old guy, the one that is interpreted by the new person. See, the difference between life and interpretation of life, vague. The difference between width and depth. No, it is not width and depth. It's actually depth and depth. No, he's going. Anyways, difference between legendary character and other and the modern day singer. Clearly, option B. Look at this. The sea and other creation leads Rilke to. This is a part. Okay, let's see whether you can handle this. Pause the video, mark the answer, and then I'll tell you what the answer is. Alright, it says, and Rilke leads to a story in which, as in T.S. Eliot's poem, it is again the sea and the distance of other creation that becomes the image of poet's reality. Key thing, that becomes the image of poet's reality. Becomes the image of poet's reality. I'm thinking the word should have poet at least. Option A. Define the place of poet in his culture. Read the other option, doesn't make any sense. A is best suited as your answer. Reflect on the role of the oarsman and the singer, muse on artistic labor and his aimlessness, understand the element that one has to deal with. Okay, that's a question, and that's a part from which it comes. So you try and answer this question. Alright. According to the passage, the term adventure experience refers to. This is where it is. The adventure of experience set out as though in lifeboat to rescue and bring back to the shore treasures of knowing and feeling with the old order left back. You're bringing back something. You're going and bringing back. You're going and bringing back. Bringing back. Bringing back. Option D. Poets and artists who rewrite legend and enrich the past for us. D is the right as a choice. So even if the question passage is tough, don't go with the attitude that you'll not be able to solve. So it doesn't matter whether the passage is tough, easy. The key thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that are you able to do the little comprehension skills, which means can you identify the main idea? Can you map the whole passage roughly? Can you figure out the author's position? Go to the question. If you can answer using what you have gathered, great. If you can't answer, go back to the passage, identify the key idea, and then try and answer the question. Please remember, the answer has to be 100% true. Hope this helped. And let me say thank you and see you with more blogs on gpkafunda.com.